Day Indie Spot Present Recap of the movie The Equalizer, released in 2014. The movie starts with a scene where we see Robert, who works at the store. Robert is an ordinary man living an ordinary life. In the evening, Robert goes to the restaurant for dinner. A girl named Terry greeted Robert and asked about the story told in the book he was reading. Not long after, Terry said goodbye to Robert and left the place. The next evening, Robert returned to his regular diner with a book and read it. Terry was seen entering the diner. Terry was just about to order a drink when suddenly her cell phone rang. A call from her boss. Terry turns out to be a teenage prostitute who's working under Slavi. That night, Terry was required to serve a customer who had picked her up in front of the diner. Over the phone, Terry tries to get away from her job and persuades Slavi not to have to serve the customer. But Slavi ordered Terry to do her job immediately. Terry then left the diner and approached the man who had picked her up outside the diner. The next day, Robert went back to his usual activities. Terry was already there. Terry then walked over to Robert at the corner of her favorite table. After chatting for a while, Robert discovers that Terry is forced to work for Slavi because of debt. Robert then decided to take Terry home. Along the way, a car stopped right in front of them. Slavi got out of the car and went straight to Terry. Slavi then slapped and strangled Terry because she had disappointed her customer last night. Seeing this, Robert was about to help Terry, but Slavi threatened him not to interfere. After that, Slavi took Terry away from there. One night, one of the employees at the diner told Robert that someone had beaten Terry and was currently being treated at the hospital. Hearing this, Robert went to the hospital and found Terry lying helpless with a face covered in bruises. Mandy then tells Robert that Slavi has beaten Alina for disobeying Slavi's orders. Robert then decides to help Terry get out of her problems. Later, Slavi enters his fancy restaurant. Robert entered Slavi's office and offered him some money to free Terry, so she would no longer have to work for him. But the offer was immediately rejected by Slavi. Since Slavi refused his offer, Robert returned the money and walked towards the door. Robert locked the door to face Slavi and his henchmen. Robert overthrew Slavi and all his henchmen. The next day, Robert watched a broadcast on television that reported on the murder of Slavi and his henchmen, where the police concluded that the murder was due to a heated feud between gangs that often occurred. Later, Teddy immediately rushes to the location of Slavi's murder, where he is sent to investigate Slavi's murder and find the mastermind behind it. Meanwhile, Robert is shocked by the news of Ralphie's resignation. When Robert visited Ralphie at his residence, Ralphie seemed to be helping his mother clean up her shop, which was deliberately set on fire by corrupt police officers because her mother refused to give her the security allowance. Because of this, Ralphie decided to quit his job and focus on helping his mother at the store. In the evening, Robert decides to help Ralphie. He secretly follows corrupt cops who collect security allowances. Robert then recorded the actions of the corrupt police officers, then came to them and threatened to distribute the footage if they did not stop their actions. After being beaten by Robert, the corrupt police officers returned what they had taken from the residence and no longer carried out the act. Ralphie finally returned to work. Teddy seems to be interrogating gangsters who are often involved in business with Slavi. With no results, Teddy then investigates the prostitutes, and he finally finds out about Terry. Teddy then goes to Mandy and urges her to reveal all the information about Terry. Mandy then told Teddy about the black man who had come to visit Terry in the hospital. After that, Teddy kills Mandy. After receiving information from Mandy, Teddy immediately checked the CCTV cameras at the hospital and the location of Slavi's murder. The next night, Teddy comes to Robert's house and claims to be a police officer investigating the Slavi murder case. Teddy then asks about the whereabouts of Robert. Robert then calmly answered all the questions asked by Teddy. However, both Teddy and Robert knew they had lied. Robert already guesses that Teddy is not a policeman, and Teddy concludes that Robert is the mastermind behind Slavi's murder. Knowing that Robert immediately arranged a plan to leave his apartment, Teddy orders one of his men to attack Robert at the diner, where Robert can easily knock out Teddy's men. Robert then exits the diner and finds Teddy in his car. where Robert then takes a picture of the man with his cell phone camera. Teddy and his men then chased Robert to his apartment, but they did not find Robert there. Robert turns out to be somewhere else, watching the movements of Teddy and his henchmen through a hidden camera in his apartment. Robert decides to visit his old friend Susan, who uses her resources to give Robert information about Vladimir Pushkin and his operations. After giving all the information that Robert wanted, Susan told her husband that Robert didn't ask for help, he asked for permission. Robert first goes to Pushkin's cash vault, where he can easily incapacitate all of Pushkin's men, lock them all in the refrigerator, and then call the police and leave the evidence as a memory stick. In the evening, Teddy is seen having dinner at a fancy restaurant. Robert then entered the restaurant and approached Teddy. Robert then sat there, handing Teddy the hitman's cracked and bloodied glasses. Robert then reveals that he already knows about Teddy's past and warns Teddy to stop pursuing him. Later, Robert destroys oil tankers belonging to Pushkin and ultimately destroys Pushkin's entire business in the United States. After that, Teddy immediately set up a plan to immobilize Robert. Teddy and his henchmen go to the store and take several of Robert's co-workers as hostages. After that, Teddy called Robert and threatened to kill Robert's co-workers if he didn't come to the store soon. Robert had expected this, as he managed to sneak into the control room and tune into the loudspeaker to distract Teddy and his henchmen. After knocking down some of Teddy's men, Robert frees Ralphie and asks him to help their co-workers escape through the back door. Robert then turned off the main lighting in the store, leaving only the dim spotlights. Robert immediately kills Teddy's men one by one using the tools there and eventually confronts Teddy and kills him with a nail gun. Robert travels to Moscow 3 days later and kills Pushkin's guards at his mansion. Robert tricks Pushkin into electrocuting himself to death. After Robert returned to the United States, Terry approached him. Terry also thanked Robert for giving her a second chance. Robert always visits his regular diner, but now brings a book and a laptop, where Robert then posts an online advertisement, identifying himself as the Equalizer. I like the story and will advise you to watch it the first chance you get.